Perched on the highest point of the wonderful Sussex Weald, 42 miles south of London, sits Crowborough Beacon Golf Club. The old English name for the area was a golden-coloured hill, and this brightly shining gem has a history as rich as time itself. On land mentioned in the Domesday Book, formerly owned by an early Archbishop of Canterbury, the manor of Alphonse was gifted by Queen Elizabeth I herself to the local noble family, the Sackvilles, and then in the early part of the 19th century it passed to the Delawares. Crowborough Beacon was on the map and known for its extensive and beautiful scenery as well as its invigorating pure air, a healthy microclimate away from the disease-ridden and polluted capital. It was and still is a view unsurpassed in southern England.
Well done, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
To quote Bernard Darwin, a golf journalist in the 1920s, "The first thing that will strike the golfer who comes fresh to Crowborough is the wonderful view. I do not suppose there is a wider or more beautiful one in all of England." Good day to you all. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, surgeon, sportsman, spiritualist, but you'll know me best for being the creator of the world's finest detective, Sherlock Holmes. Now, I came to Crowborough for Louisa, my first wife's health. She needed to breathe this fine Sussex air, and after her death I moved into Windlesham, where I married my second wife, Jean, in 1907. I was elected captain of this great club 3 years later, and Jean was made ladies' captain the following year. I always enjoyed the view from my study window, and in those days I could see clear across the golf course. Although most famous for my brilliant detective, I considered that my greatest work was my adventure story, The Lost World. That was my finest work. And it was inspired by an iguanodon footprint they dug up on the 4th tee. I wonder what his handicap was. The Crowborough Beacon Golf Course and Club had all begun with the drive, initiative, and let's not forget the money of our founding fathers who first got together for a meeting to discuss their plans at the Red Cross Inn, now the Crowborough Cross Inn, in June of 1895. Names like G.T. Langridge, Hugh Verrill, F.H. Gresson and Dobry Wickham are long gone, but they're never forgotten. Many of the club's principal competitions are named in their honour, with original trophies kindly donated by them. Henry Charles Malden is remembered the world over for writing the Cambridge Rules for Football, the forerunner of the modern game. But to us, he was our first captain in 1895. And look closely, and you'll see my name up there as well. But there are so many other interesting characters. Not many clubs can boast a US Open champion among their ranks, but we can. His name? Horace Thomas Rawlins, a young assistant professional who won the very first US Open held at Newport Golf Club in Rhode Island in 1895, and then came here to work for us for the winter. His prize money for winning that trophy? $200, and they deducted $50 to pay for his medal. Canny folk, these Americans. In Crowborough that year, a lease had been negotiated with the Earl Delaware for land on the southern slopes of the Beacon, and a playable 9-hole golf course was designed and constructed in just 6 months, with a private house on the corner of Beacon Road and Southview Road rented as the first clubhouse, but subsequently purchased at the princely sum of £2,100 in 1902. The money mostly came from the issue of debentures, with a balance of £900 raised after a stirring appeal by Alfred Tyler, that year's club captain, at the AGM. And that's when annual club subscriptions were a mere 2 guineas. Alfred still features here in this painting by Charles Vigor of the Royal Academy. It was purchased for the club in 1954 by the then secretary Patrick Smart. It's quite an impressive picture. Even more significantly, in 1906, Hugh Verrill negotiated the purchase of the manorial rights of the manor of Alcorns from the 8th Earl Delaware. Thus the club became freehold owners of the land, purchased at a price of £750, making the club its own landlord, a position that could be rivalled by few other golf clubs at the time. No time was lost with a new clubhouse being constructed in 1907, following the plans of architect and 1904 club captain Langton Dennis, the premises which still serve us so well to this day. A new pro shop was added in 1914, and it's still in use. What a beautiful view. It was Lord Henry Neville, the then Vice President, who negotiated favourable rates for bona fide members on the railway between Victoria and Crowborough. It cost them just 9 shillings return. That's 50p in newfangled money. Charles Darwin's grandson Bernard, the Times golf correspondent, published a hole-by-hole guide of the course in 1926, full of lyric prose, which would have given his famous grandfather's Origin of the Species a run for his money. Winston Churchill and his wife Clementine got soaked here once during a parliamentary prize giving, and the then club stewards Charles and Marie Robertson lent them their spare clothes while theirs were drying. Oh, That was the talk of the town at the time. Henry Cotton played an exhibition match here in 1937. And 4 times Open winner Bobby Locke famously confronted an adder in the rough when he played here. For the ladies, 3-time British Ladies Amateur Champion Lady Margaret Scott served on the Ladies Committee in the 1920s after being invited to become an honorary member by her sister-in-law, the Right Honourable Mrs. Mary Scott, elected Lady Captain no less than 8 times in that era. Former English Ladies Amateur Champion 3 years running between 1931 and 1933, and a member of the inaugural Curtis Cup team, Enid Wilson, too became an honorary member in 1981. At the age of 71, she was still playing off 5. And how could we forget that the first tee shot ever was made by Lady Cantaloupe in October 1895. We have a proud war record here at Crowborough. Charlie Macy, our professional from 1912 to 1941, served in France during the First World War and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Royal Sussex Regiment. All told, some 55 club members served in the Great War alongside 43 caddies and member of the Delaware Artisans Club, which was founded in 1896 and then absorbed into the main club in 1980. And me? In my mid-50s I was deemed too old to serve, so I formed the Crowborough Volunteers. This was the forerunner of what later became the Home Guard, and some 1,200 towns and villages followed my lead. At the end of hostilities, the club was presented with a fine grandfather clock from the East Anglian Reserve Brigade. Many of their officers whiled away their off-duty hours on our course, which remained open throughout the war. It still stands here in our entrance hall, keeping time as it flies by, chiming on the hour. But sadly, 20 of our members would never play the fairways again, including my own son Kingsley. Captain Conan Doyle was wounded on the Somme and died 2 years later from the Spanish flu, his body's resistance weakened by his wounds. We made a pact to meet again on the 4th green on the anniversary of his death. Did he ever return? That's between me and my brilliant boy. During the Second World War, I understand that local officers stationed at Crowborough Camp became temporary members, and the ever-present threat of airborne invasion meant our fairways were planted with stout poles to prevent glider landings. The whole country feared we would be overrun by Hitler's paratroops. By the time of the Battle of Britain in 1940, we had an anti-aircraft battery just off the 9th green, along with a brick-built observation tower. Later, an underground bunker was sunk by the 18th tee. They even used these facilities during the Cold War in the 1950s and 60s. Oh, it was all pretty hush-hush. Careless talk cost lives, remember? But our stout defences couldn't prevent the V-1 rocket, which landed on the cookhouse on the course manned by the men of the Lincoln and Welland Regiment of the Canadian 4th Armoured Division in 1944. This rogue doodlebug caused the worst casualties of any Canadian military unit in England. And there's a memorial to the fallen nine just off the 4th fairway. Our links with those brave Canadians continue to this day. Their regimental commanding officer and staff joined us for the 75th anniversary of the tragedy in 2019, and the new CO visited in 2022. Links forged in war and furthered in peace. A member in later life, Clem Elson, here with his wife, was an army officer who became prisoner of war following capture during the withdrawal to Dunkirk. He escaped German custody twice before being sent to Oflag 4C, yes, the foreboding Colditz Castle. Clem served on the escape committee there. He never mentioned it. And when highly decorated Lancaster bomber pilot Patrick Doyle was asked about his heroics by fellow golfers, about his part in the famous 1942 Augsburg raid and later bringing home a crippled aircraft after one of his 60 missions, thus saving the lives of his crew, Flight Lieutenant Doyle, DSO, DFC and Bar just said, "I was lucky." And this wonderful painting of his Lancaster still hangs in our clubhouse. Patrick died in 2016, and at his wake he was honoured by a Spitfire from his old squadron flying low over the clubhouse terrace. And the lives we lost? Well, 10 members' names are carved on our honours board. Army, Navy and Air Force. And as long as this club exists, we will remember them. I played many golf courses, of course, but Crowborough Beacon was my favourite. You know what used to happen? I used to arrange for the young lad here, Harry Constable, to be my caddy. And I'd say to Harry, nip up to Windlesham and fetch my clubs. And he'd run up them and the butler would hand them over and I'd come down on my pony and trap. And then we'd tether the horse and make sure he had some water and we'd play. And after about 4 holes, that was enough for me. So I'd say to Harry, you finish. I always paid him for the full round though. Of course, the layout was somewhat different in my year as captain. I'm proud to say that I myself brought in the renowned golf course architect Harry Colt for advice, and then in the 1920s it changed dramatically when the club employed the great Dr. Alistair Mackenzie of Augusta fame to redesign several holes. Later James Braid was also involved, so our golf course's pedigree is undoubted. Post-World War II, I know there was much discussion amongst members referenced the energy-sapping sequence of the then holes 8 to 11. The 9th at this time was over 600 yards from tee to green, once mooted to be the longest golf hole in England. I confess even I used to rest waiting by the 8th, sometimes letting the caddy play holes 9 through 11 and recommencing my round on the more level 12th fairway. In the late 1950s, the club captain was Charles Heslett, a famous amateur golfer in earlier days, winner of the Irish Amateur Championship twice in 1926 and 29, and a member of the Worker Cup team in 1924, 26 and 28. He qualified for the Open Championship 3 times, finishing 17th at Royal St George's in 1928, one shot better than Henry Cotton. And under his captaincy, Charles oversaw radical changes in the layout of those punishing holes 8 to 11, giving us the course that we know and love today. Oh, how I would dearly have loved to play these new and far less tiring holes. So here we are today, an historic club that enjoys its links to the past, but is now capable of giving members a fairway to the future with both an active golf and social calendar. The club boasts a full-time catering team that can keep all happy with everything from bar snacks to fine dining. Special events, birthdays, anniversaries and celebrations go hand in hand with weekly Sunday lunches and social events, all organised in-house by our superb functions team. And our course, the jewel in the Crowborough crown, well, that's kept in tip-top condition by our course manager and his professional team of greenkeepers. Looking after 260 acres is a tall order, but it's a task managed with great skill, much dedication and hard work. Over the years, a series of golf professionals have loyally served the club. From our first pro, Arthur Jackson, in 1895, assisted by Horace Rawlings, William George Diwali from 1896 to 1912, then 2 generations of Macy's, Charlie Sr. from 1912 to 41, and Charlie Jr. from 41 to 75, and then our current pro Dennis Newnham, 1987 to date. Just these 5 account for over 115 years of our history. Dennis continues to provide tuition for new golfers and skill honing for established players, and his pro shop is stocked to the rafters with everything a golfer needs, with expert advice always on hand. History like ours needs to be displayed well, and our archive committee has assembled an incredible collection of artifacts and photographs displayed here in the lounge annex, and they really bring history to life. And you know, I'm delighted to say there's even a medal on display that I won myself in 1909. And this is the very medal. And upstairs in the committee room there are photos and memorabilia of 2 generations of Macy's who spanned many decades as our club professionals, the room being dedicated to their memories. From prehistoric lizards to me, steel true, blade straight, Arthur Conan Doyle, knight, patriot, physician and man of letters, as they wrote on my epitaph. From the first US Open Champions medal to the 21st century golfer's GPS watch, from Darwin to Churchill, spanning 3 centuries, through 2 world wars and still going strong. There you have it, Crowborough Beacon Golf Club. I've greatly enjoyed coming back from the other side to take you around the course. It's one of the finest golf clubs in our United Kingdom. And that, my friends, is elementary.